Welcome to the Biz Gone Social podcast. We help entrepreneurs navigate how to get known, get customers, and get the edge over their competition. Here is your host, Lorraine Duncan.
So here we are on the Biz Gone Social podcast, and I am so glad to be here. My promise to you, as always, is I want to give you a little bit of verbal caffeine that's going to energize your business and help you stay social. Because after all, don't you want to be the business that everyone's talking about? And I know I do. And I'm so stoked today to have Dan Peterson with me. Welcome, Dan.
Hello, Lorraine. Thanks for having me.
Tell me a little bit about your business, what you do, and who you serve.
So about, 12 years ago now, coming up on it here at the end of 2023 when we're recording this, I started an agency, a digital agency that serves small business owners to mid-sized companies. And that comes from my passion for helping small business because I grew up in the 80s in a small town where my family owned a Ben Franklin store, which is like a precursor to a Walmart. And I grew up in that environment of retail and small business ownership, and all my other family members, for the most part, own businesses too. So it was a natural step for me to be an entrepreneur, and I worked in a lot of different industries. And then, like I said, over a decade ago, I started FlipSwitch as a solution for small business owners who needed help with digital marketing, but didn't have the budgets and the knowledge of, or the staffing that the big companies have that they're competing with. So that's what I did, and that's what I still do. And I also have a partial ownership in a pizza place and some other business interests that I'm involved in. But my main thing is FlipSwitch.
Nice. I love the name. How'd you come up with that name? Why that name?
It actually, I had a dream, and I had been trying to think of a name of a company, and I just woke up one morning and was like, FlipSwitch. And I looked it up, and there was no other FlipSwitch at the time. Now there's a couple that are not marketing related, really. They're like something else. But and I was like, it's perfect. You flip a switch, and our initial tagline was "Turn on your profit." But the problem with that is then it immediately alludes to the fact that, as you and I both know, owning agencies, people think that you can just flip a switch and turn on your profit. So I did away with that tagline because I didn't want people to think that social media was all about instant gratification and instant revenue. And so now we do have a tagline. It's think social first is our tagline now, so that we get people to try to think about social media first when they're out and about. If you're a business owner, you're running around town, how can you create content doing your day-to-day things and stuff like that? But it is no longer turn on your profit.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. You know, we're both in this space, so we very well know some of the trends that, are coming up. And one of the biggest one that just hit our space maybe about a year ago, I've been actually doing it longer now though, is AI. Mm-hmm. What is your opinion of that? And do you feel that it is going to be a game changer when it comes to online marketing in the future?
Yes, and yes, and yes, it already is. So my opinion on it is that it's going to revolutionize our world. And I don't say that lightly. I don't think people that are not educated in it, which is a lot of people, including a lot of companies, I don't think they realize the implications of AI and what it's really going to mean. And if you think back, for those that are listening that are old enough to remember when the internet came around, if you can imagine that type of revolutionary entity at a scale way beyond what we've ever seen, it'll make the internet look like nothing when it's all said and done. I think in 10, 20, 30, 40 years, people will look back and be like, oh my gosh, AI makes the internet and social media, which are the two biggest things that have really ever happened to society. From a social standpoint, I think those two things are going to pale in comparison to AI. And that being said, I also think that there's massive upside for businesses and individuals alike to use AI in different capacities in their lives, in their businesses. And I used it yesterday for my kids' homework because it was a stupid question, and the question didn't even make sense. And I'm a 44-year-old man with a pretty high IQ, and I couldn't figure it out. And I'm like, this just is, I'm done. So I just ran it through Chat GPT, and it gave me like 10 different ways to solve the issue. And I'm like, you know what? We got to stop trying to hide from this technology as an education system and start diving into it and making sure our kids know how to use it. So I think it's the biggest thing that we're going to see in our lifetimes. That's how big I think it is.
Yeah, I mean, I when I first started using it, was very generic and it was good. And sometimes I just used it for outlines, and sometimes I used it for captions and stuff. But what was really crazy was probably about 2 months ago, it started talking in my voice, like vocabulary words that I say. And that was weird. A
Yeah,
little
that's
scary.
funny.
But I just see so much. I mean, literally, I have to do a PowerPoint presentation, and I was able to just get the main points, because I don't like to put a lot of words on slides. So I just threw it through ChatGPT, and then I picked the slides that I wanted to use. And that was that easy.
Yep.
It's great. So when it
Oh, it's
comes to
amazing.
so when it comes to social media, and I mean, when we talk about digital marketing, it's more than just social media. It's social media, it's paid ads, it's websites, it's email marketing, it's, a whole slew of different services. What do you think is every business should be doing right now when it comes to online marketing?
I think they need to pay attention to what is going on in the world. I think that too many of them are stuck in the past on social media. And, get a lot of questions about things that are the same questions I was getting 5, 6, 7 years ago. And just think of how fast things change in 5 to 7 weeks, let alone 5 to 7 years. So I think there's a lack of understanding. I think the best way I can put it, there's a lack of understanding amongst business owners. And when I say business owners, I'm not just talking small to like mid-size executives, things like that. I'm talking all the way up through the marketing ranks of some big companies. They just don't understand what is going on with marketing in the advertising world right now, and how powerful things such as, Reels and TikTok and the short form video types of formats are. For example, they're looking at it like you got to run an ad against a demographic that you're trying to target. They don't realize you can drill that down, and with organic stuff, not even a paid ad now, just a good piece of content that is targeting, based on the content, it's targeting your audience, and do really, really well. We have clients that have posted 2 times on TikTok and have 10,000 followers from it because the content is so good. And now they're starting to leverage that and turn it into other stuff, which is leading to actual client revenue and things like that. But to answer your question, I mean, just going back to what I said, like they're just not paying attention to what's really going on, which is people being on social every day, all day, and using it as their new form of entertainment. And it's now television. I mean, that's all my kids do is watch YouTube. They don't really watch TV anymore. It's, even if it is a TV show, it's on YouTube or it's on something like Netflix that's streaming or something like that. But there's just a lack of knowledge of what's going on, I think.
Yeah. And I have noticed, it's so funny because I think about this whole TikTok movement, and I mean, it's not new, of course, but my son his genre of music is rapping. And so he's actually on TikTok, and he's got over, I don't know, 110,000 of followers on TikTok.
Nice.
And he hasn't, I mean, I know that he has done some ads through the agency that he's working with, but literally he's basically he's gotten most of his followers through just live streaming on TikTok. He goes on and he sings, he engages very well with his audience. I even go on and listen, even though sometimes I don't like the music, but I can't believe I'm saying that aloud on air, but I just don't like that kind of music. But I'm, a 95 95 rock person.
But your point is, and it's exactly what I'm saying, like attention right now is on pop culture and it's on these platforms for the teens, 20s, and early 30 somethings that are really engaging heavily. So if a small business, especially that's who I'm really talking to, but if any business or any type of marketer isn't looking at it from an attention standpoint where, you can see, like you said, where people are creating music or they're creating content and random high schoolers now have 1 million followers on a platform and they're getting paid six-figure incomes on content they're making. If you extrapolate that and take it back to what a small business could do with that type of attention, I mean, why aren't they paying attention is my kind of thing. And I think part of it is an age issue, because most business owners are in their late 30s on up. And I'm 44 and I'm a dinosaur in social media, so to speak. And it's just crazy how there's so much stuff that people could be doing on digital platforms like TikTok and Reels and all these other things to drive attention to their business, and they're not doing it. They would rather put a print ad in the local magazine in your town for $1,000 and it gets distributed to 5,000 homes once a year or something like that. And instead of taking that $1,000, putting into digital ads that target exactly who your custom demographic is that you've created in your 5 mile radius of your business. And that $1,000 could run for 3 or 4 months and bring you legitimate business through the door that's trackable, that has metrics and all of that. There's just so much that people are missing still all these years later on digital. And I think that's what drives me the craziest about it. It's like, it's not new. This has been around now for a long time.
Yeah, me too. I do a lot of speaking, and one of the things that I do is I educate people, for instance, on social media. And when somebody says to me, is like, their market is kids, is teens and 20-year-olds, and they're on Facebook, I kind of laugh a little bit because, nobody's on Facebook because your mother and father are on Facebook. And I don't want to be on Facebook with my mother and father.
Yeah,
but
it's the parents' platform.
An interesting thing I have seen, though, is another thing when you think about what people are doing and not really paying attention, is I say this all the time, is everybody's on their phone. And if you're not doing, like, the boomers will do this because they forget to turn their volume off, but everything has to have a caption on it. And lately I've been watching TikTok videos, and there's been videos on Instagram that they don't have any captions on it. And those are automatically generated. You can have them just turn on, automatically generate. It's amazing to me how many people have not even paid attention to that. If you're going to spend the money or do a really nice video, make sure, you have the captions already there, because actually sometimes the automated captions, they make a mistake. So, anyways, I mean, what are you thinking?
They're still better than nothing, though. To your point, like 80 or 85% of videos are watched without volume on. Yeah. Whether it's somebody laying in bed and doesn't want to wake up their spouse, or it's the kid in bed at night who doesn't want their parents to know they're on their phone, or whatever the case is, or if you're on the subway or a plane, or, so much content is consumed where the volume is non-existent, and yet captions aren't used, and it's an immediate skip, right? And your whole job as a business owner now, here's a good takeaway for your audience, is to stop the scroll. That's all you have to think about when you create content. What can I do to stop the scroll? Get people to stop for 3 seconds and watch it, from 3 seconds to 10 seconds, from 10 seconds to 30 seconds. And make sure you build those points through the video or whatever the piece of content is that you create that gets people to stop first and then also stay on long enough to watch your whole message. Because the longer you watch the video, the algorithm picks up on that. And people are like, wow, people really like watching the whole video from this company. We're going to show more of this type of content to their audience. And then it's a snowball effect, and your content gets viewed more by your audience. But stopping the scroll is the whole name of the game.
Yeah, I love that, by the way. I love that. It's like, And if you're not producing any content that is stopping the scroll, then you're again missing the point of what you're supposed to be doing with social media content,
Sure.
being relevant, making sure that it's not what you think it is. Everybody always thinks, well, I think it's this. I'm like, no, what does your audience think it is? So
That's
it's
exactly right.
funny
Let's
story.
talk about, oh, go ahead.
No, go
I was
ahead. No,
gonna,
you go. You go.
I
You
was
want
just
to
going to say really quick, let's talk about that point. So the whole point of content creation is to snag the audience, stop the scroll, get them to watch the piece of content that you create, and then eventually at some point take some kind of action on it, whether that's, they really like, they watch 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of your videos, they're like, oh, I really like this. And then they go to your homepage or your profile page and they look at it, and then they click a website link and they look at it, or whatever the case is. But so many business owners nowadays are more concerned to exactly what you said with what they think the content should be, what they think it should look like. And part two is that they are using the same piece of content across all platforms instead of changing it up for the audience. If you're trying to reach teens, then yeah, be on TikTok, be on Snapchat, be on Reels. But if it's a broader swath that you're trying to reach, let's say from teens, 20s, all the way up to 50-year-olds or 60-year-olds, then you need to be on all the platforms, and that piece of content needs to resonate on each platform. So you might use some current rap song or piece of pop culture on the TikTok end, and then on the Facebook end, it is more formal and less, what do I want to say, less comical and kind of funny as it might be on TikTok if that's who you're trying to reach. But you have to understand your audience on every level and on every platform and change the content. It is not one piece of content fits all. And that's a big mistake that we're seeing a lot of people use. And that's one of the things that we coach heavily on
Yeah,
is changing content per platform.
absolutely. And I confess, sometimes I get a little lazy in my own marketing, and like,
Yeah, we all do.
I repurpose, and maybe I've repurposed a little too much, and but sometimes, obviously, sometimes I've repurposed a little too much.
But that's
But
better than nothing, though. For the listener out there, if that's all you can do and that's all you have time for, by all means, it's better to do that than to not post at all. And that's
yeah,
another thing we talk a lot about, is just not being overly critical of what you are posting. Just get out of your own way, post the content, let the audience determine if they like it or not. Take the feedback that you get, whether that's views or comments, and create new content based on what you're seeing that resonates, and rinse, repeat over and over until you get really, really good at making content based on the audience feedback. But that's a whole nother discussion.
oh yeah. Now, I want to ask two questions here that I know you probably have heard from people, and
Okay.
so how do you address, so that these are, as a digital marketing agency, you are the expert, I am the expert, and
Mhm.
every once in a while I'll get these two comments. Okay, comment number one is, my 5-year-old can do that. That would be comment number one.
Okay.
And I posted on, so here's the other comment. I posted on social media a year ago, and I didn't get any clients. How do you respond to that, in all seriousness? Because, and I've heard some of that more than once or twice in a room full of people.
Oh
Which,
gosh, I've heard it 1,000 times. No,
yeah.
you're not wrong on this. It's two of the probably 3 or 4 biggest questions that or comments or whatever that I've heard over the years.
So let's
Um,
clear the air on that. I want to hear, you're an expert, and to be honest, if I was not in your space, right, I certainly
mhm.
wouldn't be hiring, number one, a 5-year-old, and I certainly wouldn't expect any business from putting one post a year ago.
Right. Well, so I haven't heard a 5-year-old. That's a little younger than I've heard, but I do hear that, oh, my niece, nephew, cousin, daughter, uh, or ex-employee, XYZ employee can do this. And so I always ask two things when I hear that, because it's basically an excuse for them not producing content, is what I found. Usually when they say they can do that, it's like, well, why haven't you been doing it then? Why hasn't the 15-year-old kid or the 20-year-old niece or whoever, why haven't they been doing it? But two things. One, it's a lot different going on Instagram or one of these platforms and going into the DMs of all your friends and trying to set plans for the weekend, or scheduling a date with a boy or girl or something like that. That's a lot different than creating a business strategy that is executed on a daily basis for a business in the long term. And even if you've got somebody that is good at creating content, I have no doubt every business out there probably has somebody standing around for at least an hour or two a day, probably making their own content on their phone that should be creating content for the business, but they're not. And and this is something we coach on, I task that business owner to get that person that is on their phone a little bit to take half that time and work a deal. Say, look, I know you're on your phone. It's nobody, I don't like it that you're on your phone and not sweeping the floor or whatever, but let's work this out. So you want to be on your phone, and I want you to create content for the business. You create 2 videos every day for the business, 2 pieces of content per day. And the rest of the time, as long as those 2 things are done, when there's downtime, you can be on your phone. That would work better than expecting them to not be on their phone, or expecting them to do it without any kind of repercussion or any kind of payment of some kind or something like that for not doing it. So that's something that we talk about a lot, is having that person on staff creating content. But to the point of the 5-year-old, or in this case, I'm talking like 15, 20-year-olds, they don't know the algorithms. They don't understand the tactics behind what is going on. They just know how to create what is the pop culture type of thing going on, which is close. It's ironic that it's actually very close to what the business should be doing. But now, how do you take that and turn it into a business strategy that is going to actually yield results in the long term? So that's the first thing. The second thing, posting a year ago and not seeing results, I hear this all the time. Well, I used to be on social media, I just never got anything from it. And they don't necessarily say a year. It might be a week, a month, 2 years, whatever. I have pretty much the same response for any period of time, because it doesn't matter if you've been on it for 2 weeks or 2 years or 10 years and you've not seen results. It's because you're not doing something right. You either don't understand the attention strategy that is out there now, where you have to create content that drives attention, or you're not doing it enough. Even if you are good at it, you're not doing it enough, or you're not putting any kind of paid ad dollars behind the right parts of strategy to ultimately create some type of click, whether that's clicking to your website to fill out a newsletter to get them in that funnel, or it's clicking on a t-shirt on Instagram to go buy it on the Spotify website, or Shopify website, or whatever the case is. There's something that's broken in that, because if you're creating the right type of content on a regular basis and you're doing it with your audience in mind, your actual customer demographic in mind, it does work. It will work. And if it doesn't, you're just not doing it right. So in those cases, I pretty much ask a series of questions about, like, how, what did the content look like? What did you do? Why do you think it didn't work? Did you have metrics or any kind of analytics set up to track why it didn't, quote unquote, work? Do you have Google Analytics running on your website to see if people actually went there, but maybe they didn't convert because your website sucks? So whatever the case is, that's usually something is broken in the channel.
Yeah, it's so true. And that's basically the same thing that I go through with them, is like, I always want to know anyways, when I start working with a client, for instance, what's working and what has worked in the past and what's not working now, because that's really important to know that. And then you can kind of figure out what's really going on. I'm going to switch gears here a little bit.
Okay.
And so I wanted to, this is where we sort of get real and honest. Not that we're not being real and honest now, but we're going to go a little deeper. What do you love the most about being in business for yourself?
My control of my schedule, for lack of a better way to put it. I've got 3 daughters, wife. We're busy, but if I can at least have control of my portion of that, and my wife has been a stay-at-home mom for the majority of the last 15 years, up until the last couple of years when she started working. She's been a stay-at-home mom. So, and let me rephrase that. When she started working outside of the house, the stay-at-home mom job is harder than anything I think on the planet. Because the 3 days that she was gone last month, and I did the stay-at-home dad thing, I about pulled my hair out. So, but anyway, so yeah, it's controlling my own calendar, my own schedule, and being able to call the shots. I think life is too short for people to work for somebody else for 30, 40 years and retire when they're 65 or 67 or whatever and live till they're 70 something or 80 something. It's just, it doesn't make any sense. So I try to do it, have the ability now to live on my terms and take vacations when I want. And we're not big on school. And I don't mean like we don't believe in it. I'm just saying like I have no problem pulling my kids out of school for a week or week and a half, using a weekend or something like that, and going away for 8 or 10 days, because those memories and that time with those kids is well worth anything. It's worth a million times more than anything they're going to learn in class for a week. So, so there's that. I think that's a big aspect of it, but also just my ability to help people in doing what I want to do. And I can't, I can do it a little bit for somebody else. I could work, if I worked for your agency, we're all obviously together in it, helping people, helping businesses, but I can have the max impact on my mind anyway by running the company versus working for somebody else, even if we have the same goal in mind. So I guess there's
Yeah,
two parts to that for me.
I love that. 3 daughters. Wow, that's pretty scary. A lot of drama.
It's terrifying.
I have one daughter and 3 sons. So the daughter always came with a lot of drama, but that's okay. So,
That's where we're at right now. Yep.
yeah,
That's funny.
I'm lucky though. I'm an empty nester, so that's even better. So it goes by fast, and it's good that I had no qualms too, by the way, of taking my kids out of school if we needed an extra day of traveling to get where we needed to. Half of, I mean, they only really do school work for maybe 2 hours of the 6 hours that they keep them between changing classes and everything else they have to do. So here's, we both of us know this. We both know because of what we do, and we know from other entrepreneurs that, a lot of people will say that they think you're cool because you own your own business, or it's glamorous for whatever reason they think that is. But the struggle is real, and we both struggle. What would you say is your biggest struggle owning your own business in 2023?
Oh man, I think it's honestly going back to kind of the parenting thing. I think it's having. Let me say it like this, and I could be wrong on this. Maybe it's just my perception, but when I was a kid, in growing up in the 1980s and 90s, I feel like life was a lot more simple and things were slower, and there was more time, focused on family. Every day, for the most part, every day I had dinner with one or both parents. There's a lot of focus put on that family time, even though my parents were working long hours and 10-hour, 12, 14-hour days, things like that. I just feel like there was a lot more focus put on that. And I don't know if it's because I was an only child and I've got 3 kids, so it just seems like it's that much busier to me. But I know that is part of it, in fairness. But I also feel like just looking around in public nowadays and just in general, I think everybody's just so much busier. There's so much more going on. Expectations are higher. People are expected to be part of everything under the sun. And it's just very difficult. So I think part of the difficulty for me as a self-employed individual is making sure that I continue to keep things busy when for the business, obviously I got to grow the business all the time, but making sure that I carve out family time and keeping things as composed as I can on the family side of things, which is very difficult because when I'm working, somebody else isn't. And when they're busy, I'm not, and vice versa, and so on and so forth. And it's just so much to keep. It's like trying to juggle and keep all the balls in the air at the same time. So I think that's one hard thing about it. And I'd say the other part is, kind of to your point, where entrepreneurialism now is it's put on a pedestal. It's been this way for probably a decade, I would say, where it's kind of the cool thing. You have movie stars owning all these different brands. You have basketball players and professional baseball players that have side businesses. And I mean, look at Shaq. He owns like 10 or 20 different companies or something. I don't know what he owns, but or The Rock. So you've got this different level where people used to want to be a professional athlete or a ball player or a movie star or whatever. And that was it. Now those same individuals, the ones that I looked up to as a kid, are more known in some cases for what they're doing from a business owner entrepreneurial standpoint. And I think just maintaining a level of mentality of like going for it. And I don't know, there's something with that. I can't quite put it in words, but I think there's something there that makes it more difficult to be a business owner. Maybe you're under the spotlight a little bit more, or I don't know. Again, these are just perceptions. I could be making it all up for all I know. Could just be in my head.
Absolutely. I mean, I think we all think about that. I remember I grew up in the 70s and the 80s, and literally we had dinner over our grandparents on Sunday. We had dinner at the table in my house. And then when I was raising my kids, we had dinner. So it was very important that, you know, the family unit is different now. It's different in a lot of ways. You know, the traditional family is kind of not non-existent in some, you know, in some areas. And so it's really hard to keep those having dinner time together. So that is a struggle. Even now, I mean, I'm always tempted. I mean, you would probably think the same thing too. Sometimes you're in the middle of a project and you don't want to leave the project. You want to finish it. And even now being, you know, just my husband and I sometimes just want to finish the project, but I put it down. You've got to keep that creativity flow. You need to put the work down, and you need to be present with other people and have vibrant relationships. So totally agree with that.
Yeah, you're right on.
One piece of advice so think of it in these three levels, but one universal piece of advice. So you have the startup entrepreneur, you have somebody who's seasoned, and then you have someone who's thinking about it. What is one piece of advice that you could give them that's universal, that will help them, encourage them, help them move forward?
For each level?
No, just one piece of universal advice.
One piece of universal advice. All right. Well, this I think applies to all three. I think it really comes down to redefining, well, two parts to this because they go hand in hand. Knowing what you are passionate about and what you want to do, instead of, for example, I'm going to take this back for a second. Instead of going the way that you and I were raised, probably, I assume being from roughly the same generation, we probably were raised this way, where it was get through high school, go to college, get a job, you know, get a family, work till you're dead, rinse, repeat, whatever. That's everybody that I grew up with was pretty much taught the same thing. And I think now with so many more opportunities digitally and just the way things are, you know, where you have kids on YouTube making 6-7 figures and doing stuff like that, I think it's difficult. So when I look at it from a 30,000 foot view, I think it really comes down to making sure that whatever you end up doing or what you want to do from a business standpoint, if you're starting it, or even if you're seasoned and you're burnt out and you're ready to change gears or something like that, or if you just want to and you haven't done it yet, I think that making sure that whatever you go into is focused and plays off of what your passion is. And I use this for an example. If I started over right now, and I still probably am going to do this at some point for fun, but if I started over with the digital platforms that we have now and the capabilities we have now, I would get a metal detector, and I would get somebody to follow me around on video, and I would go over miles and miles of land doing metal detecting and finding things, and create a whole YouTube channel about it and all the other stuff like that, and monetize it. And that's probably what I would do for a living. I think it would be fascinating. I think it would be very entertaining for people watching, and there would be just enough of a niche value to it that I think I could make my $100,000 a year, live within my means as a family. Maybe my wife does work because 100,000 doesn't go as far anymore, but do something like that instead of trying to win the entrepreneurial lottery and grow things to millions of dollars and all this and that. I think that's going to my initial point. I think finding something that would be fun for you to do and now monetizing it, because the internet allows you to. I mean, anything under the sun, you can turn into a brand and a business and get affiliate partnerships and sponsorships and all kinds of stuff that can make you money. But that's the one thing I would recommend anybody do. And it's not too late. People that have owned businesses for 20 or 30 years, if they're sick and tired of it, switch, change gears. If you're 50, 60 years old and you're tired of it, you've still got another 30, 40, 50 years left, especially with today's technology and what's coming out with AI in the medical world. So just do what you love and find a way to make money on that. That's my biggest advice, instead of chasing the thing that we were all taught, growing up.
Absolutely. Well, you were just such a fantastic guest. Is there anything that you'd like to share with my audience? If somebody resonated with you, may need some help with social media marketing, what would that be?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's two halves to Flip Switch, my digital agency. One half is we do all the work for you. We do all the posting, the monitoring, the creative stuff. Everything's done. It's off your plate. Don't worry about it. The other half is coaching. So if you, the business owner, or you and a team member, or maybe you've got 4 or 5 people that you're tasking with digital stuff, we come in, we do coaching for you on a monthly basis. And we provide that, you or your team, with a blueprint, and you execute that blueprint for the month. And then the next month we review it, what worked, what didn't, this and that, and rinse, repeat month to month. And that's killing it right now. Everybody's loving that coaching service. So either way you go, whether it's you end up working with us on the full service side or the coaching side, just for being a guest on this show and listening to me drather on for 30 minutes here or whatever, but being on the Range show, I'd be happy to do an hour free coaching, or 1 month free of the full service, depending on what your business is. That can, be several hundred or thousands of dollars in marketing. So anyway, I would be happy to throw that out there. All you have to do is just message me on any of the social channels, or hit Flip Switch up in general and say that you were on this podcast, and we'll be happy to talk with you and see if we can help.
Great. Well, thank you again. Until next week, everyone, I'll see you soon. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Biz Gone Social podcast. Find us on Instagram at Biz Gone Social for extra tips. Check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, stay social.